And welcome back to the Survive Scale Soar podcast. I'm your host, Jeremy. Just a quick reminder the show comes in two formats: real talk, where it's just me and the mic sharing 20 years of business experience. And then there's success talks, where I get to interview people at the top of their respected industry and they share with you what has made them successful. And today I've got an amazing guest. We have Scott Florida on the show. He is the founder and visionary of Common Grace Capital. Scott, welcome to the show.
Hey, Jeremy, thanks for having me, man. Great to be here.
I'm excited about this. I was connected to you through a mutual friend, Brian, or I should say, Judge Brian Walker, who was on the show a couple episodes ago. And he said, Jeremy, you got to talk to this guy. He's doing some really amazing things in his respected industry. And so I'd like to start out by just you sharing your story. How did you get to starting Common Grace Capital?
Hey, man, thanks for asking. Yeah, I gotta love the judge. Shout out to Brian. Yeah, so it started with my wife and I. Well, we pastored for 30 years, and so going back, we were moving to a new church. We had been at one church for a couple years, and then felt God calling us to another church, and so we were moving to this new community and looking for a place to live. And in the process of doing that, man, it just seemed like any of the places that we saw were either in a pretty rough neighborhood, or it was so small that it didn't seem like it was going to be able to house our family. We had two young boys at the time, both under the age of 3, and just needed a place to live. So one of the missionaries from our church actually invited us over. And so we went to their place and they owned a duplex. And what they would do is rent out half of it when they went onto the mission field and then time the leases so that when they came home on furlough, that lease would become available and then they would move into that one side of the duplex and then continue to rent out the other side. And so they invited us over. They were living in the duplex, and man, we get into the duplex, and it's like, man, this is nicer than any of the houses that we're looking at. And he's like, yeah, and they guys on the other side help us to pay the mortgage. And I'm like, man, that sounds like a great deal. So anyway, that's that was in 1997 that we bought actually a duplex that was 2 doors down from where they lived. Those missionaries lived, and so that's how we got into real estate. So we've been real estate investors, coming up now on 30 years as well, and that's how we got into it. And what happened was, we went through this process of just continuing to grow our family. We ended up with 8 children. We had 6 of our own, and then we adopted 2 more. And in that whole process, this just as an expanding need of expenses. You got 10 people in your family, you're going to try to go hit McDonald's. I mean, you can drop $100 on something like that. And, we had worked really hard and really focused on trying to make room for Lori to stay home and live off a single income. And so, expenses were tight and things were tough. So, what ended up happening was I went through this process of just like, okay, Lord, I don't know how to handle this. I don't know how to, provide and meet the need that's here. It was clear to me through scripture that God wanted me to meet that. It wasn't necessarily the full responsibility of the church, to handle all of that. And so we began looking for, okay, how do we move forward? What steps do we take? And as I was praying and as I was trying to sort that all out, I came across a passage in the book of Exodus where God's talking to Moses. And as he's talking to Moses, he says to Moses, because Moses is in a position, hey, what do? I don't know what steps to take here. I'm not sure that I'm your guy for doing what's next. And God says to Moses, what do you have in your hand? And for me, that was a question where I thought, man, maybe God's asking me that. What do I have in my hand? Well, I had a duplex. And then actually, at that time, we had 2 because we had, a couple of years after we moved into that one, we purchased an additional duplex and moved into that one. Now, that one was a 2-bedroom, and we had 5 kids in it. And
Oh
so
wow.
that was tight. And then when your kid starts asking for a door for Christmas for his bedroom, which is really just a section of the basement, it was nice. It was all finished, but still, it was a 2 bedroom. So what ended up happening then is we moved out of that and into a rental property for a period of time, and then it was like 2009, and so we purchased a foreclosure in 2009, and that had the 5 bedrooms in it, and that was when we thought, well, maybe we should add, a couple more kids because you don't need your own room, right? So
Yep.
we each kid had a roommate then, and so that was how we added to our family. But again, even with that and living in a nice home with having that load of the financial load, it was like, just what do we do? And so that became the path for trying to figure out how to utilize real estate to grow our income and our net worth so that we could provide for our family. And so that's how it got started.
Yeah, I think that's great. So what made you go, because there's obviously a transition in role, right? You moved from pastor to starting a business.
Hmm.
Talk about that. Like what happened there? Like how did you feel led to do this? And how's that kind of the basis of Common Grace Capital?
Yeah, great question. So for us, what we were doing was building out our real estate portfolio and our income through that. And what we realized is it came to the point where we started to realize actually uh, that growth in our net worth through the owning of the property was more than I didn't really notice it per se until I came to that point where I needed to figure out the cash flow. And then that started a huge education piece of trying to understand real estate. So we had owned it, but we didn't understand it. Like in 2008 and 9, when everybody was really struggling financially, particularly in real estate, we were doing fine. And our rental properties stayed rented. And I didn't really understand it at all. Why did it, go well? Well, the reality was we owned property that was workforce housing. So people could earn their way up into it. And in the tough situations of 2008, they could lose their way down into it. And so it became right sized, for meeting needs no matter what the conditions were. And of course, I realized we were in a good market as well. That's also a huge benefit. And so, in learning all of those things and kind of building out our knowledge of real estate, we began to dial in the fact that, we're not bad at this. We're actually okay at it. There's some things that we didn't know. Now we know. But if we take all that knowledge and, going on 25 years of experience as landlords, we started realizing, we've got something that maybe we can offer to other people who are in the same position that we're in. As my wife and I were talking about it, Lori just said it'd be really great to be able to help people to stay in the places that need them, not just the places that can afford them. And so we began to look for, okay, how could we provide education and training and help to other pastors and missionaries to invest in hard assets or real assets, particularly real estate, that would provide cash flow and then ultimately provide equity growth as well so that their nest egg grows also, so they could have income that they could use for their work or to feed their families or whatever, but then also have the additional increase to their net worth that they would have for retirement.
Yeah, my pastor always says, at the services on Sunday that the church starts when you go out the doors.
Yeah.
It's not the building, it's not here. And it sounds like what you did was you took something and you built a ministry that extended beyond the walls of the church.
Yeah, yeah, that's been our heart. And the name of our company, Common Grace Capital, that's a theological concept. We talk about special grace. We talk about saving grace. Jesus died for our sins. We accept that, and we become believers, and we have eternal life as a result. Common grace is that grace that God provides to everyone. We see the passage in Scripture where he talks about how rain falls on the just and the unjust, and we just felt like that really captured what our heart was. How do we get out into the community and do good as well as have an opportunity to do well, on the financial side while we're helping our community, providing safe, clean, affordable housing, opportunities for people to, have a good place to come home to. And then also at the same time, for investors or people that work with us, provide cash flow and income so that they can take care of their families.
That's amazing. What do you think has been the biggest challenge in doing all of this that you learned the greatest lesson from?
Yeah, that's man, there's so many lessons when you step out on your own and, become an entrepreneur. And I think it's probably um, pretty consistent among entrepreneurs is you come to this place where you realize there's nobody coming to rescue you. You've got to figure this out. And so there's multiple things that stick out as like key factors for us as we look back. One of them is, when you're getting ready to make a leap like that, you want to get all your financial house in order as best you can. You want as much capital on hand as you can. You want to have backup plans in place. You want to have, credit available to the degree that you can. And a lot of those things are easier to do when you have a W-2. And so kind of putting all those pieces in order before you step into something else, I think is very, very helpful. I think another thing too is really understanding how central sales is to an entrepreneurial world. You have to be good at sales, and for me, that was something I didn't really realize. As I came in out of the ministry, as a pastor, you spend time with people. You have some level of relationship skills, or you can't do the job. But that's not the same thing. And so learning that is really significant. I felt like, and this leads into the third one, which is the education piece. When it comes to any endeavor, there is a learning curve, and that learning curve can be significant. And so that time has to be put in, and you have to put that focus on learning all that you can. And like I said, for me, a lot of it was learning sales, but there's also this huge piece of just learning real estate syndication, which is what we do on a regular basis. So there was a lot of learning that needed to take place in that realm also. So again, it's just this process. As you step into it, you start realizing these different aspects of where you have to grow. And then, obviously with that comes the need for the grit to figure out, okay, what are the key lead measures that I have to be focused on today in order to produce today, but then also to produce over the long haul. Because like in real estate business of any kind, or with business of any kind, it's all relationships. You have to show up and deliver for your customers and for your investors, and really truly care for them and provide for them the help that they need. So like there's a lot of lessons there that are kind of, that was more of a rapid fire, but it kind of gives you the idea, because it brings that's another thought that runs through my head too, and probably some of it's because all this is really fresh in my mind. But Benjamin Hardy and Dan Sullivan wrote a book called Who Not How, and there's so much to be said when it comes to starting a business, for learning who you need to be on your team, and starting to dial in those relationships as well. And again, like I said, it's a relationship business, so all those things kind of go together.
Yeah, 100% agree. It's who needs to be on your team and maybe sometimes who needs to be off the team.
Yeah,
Right.
right. But when you're starting by yourself, there's not a whole lot of letting people go.
Sure, sure. You try to do what you can, right?
That's right. Yeah.
Um, so multifaceted. What I hear is being an entrepreneur, you're going to learn lots of lessons.
Hmm.
Sometimes the hard way, sometimes it's through the investment into education or coaching or training,
Yeah,
that you're going to find those things that you need to grow.
absolutely.
Um, Talking about relationships, because I think that's so important. I work with a lot of real estate agents, a lot of small business owners. What do you think is the key thing to build a strong relationship with someone?
Mm. Yeah, that's a great question. And I learned this from Russell Gray from the real estate guys, and he always put an emphasis because he taught selling to us, and he has a thing called How to Win Funds and Influence People. It's a great um, uh, event that he does, and the emphasis is on you start by understanding the need of the person that you're talking to. So when you come into a relationship with someone, or you're looking to someone you think they might be a good fit for you as far as what you need in your business, the first question you need to ask is what do they need? And to really start with your focus on others. The key passage or Bible verse that is kind of guiding us as a company is called it's from Galatians, but it talks about do good to everyone, especially those of the household of faith. And so, like, what I recommend is, in what I think has worked really well for us, is when we step into a relationship, the first question we're asking is, okay, what do you need? And how can we come alongside to be of value and be of help to you? And you're probably familiar with the old Zig Ziglar quote. You can have anything you want in life if you help enough other people get what they want. And so that's not that's not a fast game, though. That's a slow, long-term commitment of consistently, I want to show up and provide what I can and be honest with the person I'm working with to say, I can't provide that, but I know someone who can. And so you got to be willing to kind of put your needs and the needs of your business and what's happening on the back burner until you can truly offer value to the person that you're working with, because that's the best way, and really, in my opinion, the only way to build a long-term, growing organization.
So I heard something there, and I want to get your thoughts on this. Is I see this a lot. People are wanting results immediately,
Hmm.
and I call it the fast food syndrome. I order at the thing, then get up to the window, and then they're throwing hamburgers out at me.
Yeah.
Satisfies the needs quickly. Building a business is not a fast thing, is it?
No, no, it's much more like farming than it is widget making. From my perspective, I feel like that the idea of farming captures uh, the mindset that's necessary. You're planting and you're planting and you're planting, and so your question as far as lead measures is, okay, what are the seeds that I need to plant today? Because it's not going to happen immediately. You're in real estate, right? You're selling houses, and so it's contacting potential buyers, it's contacting potential sellers, it's those seeds in which you're going out into the community and looking for people who have needs that you can help to meet, and it's letting them know that you're available to do those things. There's this significant change, I think, that happens when you're able to step away from your own needs and really truly focus on what the needs of those people that you're working with are. It really sets you up, for long-term benefit there.
Yeah. Yeah, seed planting. Are you throwing it on casting it on the rocks? Are you casting it in the thorny bushes, or are you putting it upon fertile soil? Right.
Yeah, that's all really critical pieces to then how you approach. What rooms are you looking in? What places, where are the people that you need to reach out to that you are most, um, structured to serve well?
Yeah,
Those are
that's
those are where you find that fertile soil for sure.
yeah. I love that. I want to. We're going to have you at the end. I want you to give one piece of advice to somebody that's out there listening today, like that'll help them in their business. But before we do that, I want to talk about your business, Common Grace Capital.
Mhm.
Tell me about how people can get involved in it. Maybe some of the projects that y'all are working on,
Mhm.
and so that if a listener hears this today and they want to get involved, they can reach out to you.
Yeah, so you can find our website at commongracecapital.com. That's the easiest. You can reach me at scott@commongracecapital.com. That's my email address. Happy to share with you. And again, going back to what our purpose was and what our founding was, is our goal was to provide opportunities with the focus on pastors, missionaries, frontline workers, police officers, firefighters, teachers, people that are on the front lines doing the heavy lifting of um, critical work to our communities, but don't always get the income, that maybe they deserve in those particular settings. But they're doing some of the most important work that's done, working with our kids, working with our families, and keeping us safe and alive. And so what we found though is that we can teach somebody how to buy a home and get into an investment property that way, which is a great option. And we still work with people helping them to do that. We've got some operators that we work with that provide great investment opportunities in single family real estate for investors. And so that's one path. But the other is learning about real estate syndication or real asset syndication, which is where we bring investors together and pool their capital, and then we go out and lead an investment in a project where they can invest passively, and we bringing our experience and our relationships and our contacts into those opportunities so that they can get the advantage of a real asset investment without having to deal with the day-to-day tenants, toilets, and termites, and all the various load that's related. We can carry that load for them while they can invest passively and continue to do the thing that they were born to do. So that's our design with Common Grace Capital. And basically, our focus is with working with accredited investors and bringing them together with the non-accredited investors that are the frontline workers, and together providing opportunities that provide both the cash flow, the long-term equity growth, and then often tax benefits as well for our larger investors that provide this good synergy of production over the long haul for each of our investors to where everybody wins and we get an opportunity to make a difference on Main Street as well.
Yeah, that's great. Tell me about one of the projects that caught my eye was in Austin, Texas. Tell me about that.
Yeah. So, related to projects, Austin is a exciting one that we're working on. We're using modular construction to build homes in the city. In the last year, 2024, around February, Austin changed their density laws to allow for greater density in the city to try to help, solve the problem of housing. And so what we're doing is we're purchasing lots in the city that are able to have up to 3 homes per lot. And so the way that they do that, they just have the same parcel number, but they add an A, B, or a C to the lot, and then they become individually deeded homes. And again, it's tighter construction, but depending on why you move to Austin, that can be a perfect fit, for a home. And so, utilizing modular construction, we can reduce the cost to put those homes up. So we can save up to $100 a square foot on the construction, which ultimately results in a reasonable priced home in for Austin. And again, Austin is not necessarily for the broader U.S. market considered reasonable, but you can provide a good home in the city, and then for investors, it gives them an opportunity to make a strong return as well on that product. So that's the project in Austin. We're also currently working on a project. It's an oil and gas investment, and we're very excited about that one. That one provides opportunity for, and again, these are both for accredited investors. Um, with the structure of real estate syndication, which is what we do, the Securities and Exchange Commission are involved, and so we need to file an exemption to offer projects like this to the community. Um, there's two different main designs of those types of investments. One, you can advertise, but you can only have accredited investors in the deal. And an accredited investor is someone who has over $1 million in net worth or makes over 200,000 a year. So there's that process where you can advertise, let people know what you're doing, but it's limited to who can be involved. But then there's also another project that's called a 506B, and those syndications, you can have non-accredited investors. So that's, like I said, where our target typically is. But you can only have up to 35 in each individual deal that you do. You can have as many accredited investors in those deals as you want, but it's limited in your non-accredited investors to 35. So what we've done is we realize, we need those accredited investors in our projects in order to be able to take down the deals that really provide those strong returns for our investors. With my background, I didn't have a ton of accredited investors on my list. So we went out over the last couple of years to seek to grow our accredited investor list. And that's what led to the project in Austin and then the project that we're doing with the oil and gas deal so that we can advertise those like we can here. Just talk about it on the podcast is the way we can advertise it. But other projects that we do, you have to be in relationship with us in order to take advantage of those and be aware of those. And so that's why, again, to your community, if you think that we might be able to help and that you'd be interested in looking at what we're doing and what we're up to, give us a call, shoot us an email, get on our accredited investor list. We'll set up a meeting. We'll get to know you and kind of build a relationship from there. And then going forward, projects that we do in the future would be available. So that's kind of gives you the structure. We've got some deals that we're working on in self-storage space and ultimately in triple net. There's a lot of options out there. Of course, with the modular construction, we're keeping our eye on that and looking for opportunities to develop in that as well. So a lot of options going forward, but it starts with being in relationship and getting to know one another and finding out what your needs are as an investor.
That's great. So if you have an interest in learning more about this, one more time, Scott, what website do they go to?
Yeah, just commongracecapital.com. And then again, if you want to shoot me an email, just go to scott@commongracecapital.com and look forward to connecting.
Great. Scott, somebody's listening here. You've shared lots of great stuff today. But if you had to give one piece of advice to somebody out there that might be just struggling in their business
Mm.
and they don't know which way to turn, what advice would you give them today to get them back on the path?
Mm. Well, maybe I can give two if I go quick. The first one is there's a passage in Proverbs where uh, the writer says that a righteous man falls 6 times, 7 times, and gets back up again. And I think that in the entrepreneurial journey, that's going to happen. You're going to stub your toe, you're going to trip, you're going to fall, you're going to find yourself like head in your hands. What do I do next? And the first thing is to wake up and say, okay, now what? And figure out that next step. The other that I would really encourage them to do is to spend time with um, the guys from the past that have really encouraged people in the personal growth and development space. And guys like Jim Rohn, Zig Ziglar, Brian Tracy, Dennis Waitley, some of those guys you can grab all that information or a ton of it through like a tool called Hoopla. Maybe you're familiar with that, but it's basically if you've got a library card, you can download Hoopla and you can listen to endless audiobooks from these just wise, great guys that are going to come alongside you and just say, hey, it's up to you. You got to get up today and you got to get after it. You can do it. And you find, sometimes that encouragement and that voice of, hey, I know it's hard. If it was easy, everybody would be doing it, right? So you were born for this. You've got what it takes. Get up and get after it. And that's the thing I think that I would say to people that are trying to figure this out is you're going to need grit. You've got it in you. Take those steps, make those moves. And again, think long term. But if you're thinking long term, that means you got to figure out today. So, one step at a time, but keep stepping, man.
I love that. Yeah. There's so much of this new age stuff out here and do it this way. And I'm just like, man, I'll go back to Zig
Yeah.
or any of those guys. It's just amazing how timeless that knowledge is. And a lot of it, what I love about the older stuff is it comes back to saying, hey, it's up to you. If it is to be, it's up to me.
Yeah, that's right.
And
That's
I think we
Brian.
need to
Yeah.
hear that more often. So it
Yeah.
takes a lot of work.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's that lesson of knowing that nobody's coming to rescue you, but you have everything that you need. You've just got to keep at it and figure it out, and you'll be a different person as a result of solving, those needs of today. Every day when you get up and you do that, you're learning something that is really building a foundation for what you need for tomorrow. You're that much better than you were yesterday because of the problems that you solved yesterday. So you come in today with that strength. So keep going, because you got some problems now that you're better equipped to solve that you weren't as equipped to solve yesterday.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Scott, thank you again for being on the show. For those that would like more information, go to commongracecapital.com and reach out to Scott, and he'd be more than happy to answer any of your questions. Scott, again, thank you for being on the show.
Thanks for having me, Jeremy. Great to be with
All
you.
right. Until next time, onward and upward.